ප්‍රියතම POTV දැන් කැමති තැනක කැමති විදියට ඇති වෙනකන් බලන්න. POTV Go app එක දැන්ම දාගන්න. SLT POTV TV බලන හොඳම විදිහ.
Tonight, fruits of emergency regulations. 2 organisations, including the National Tawhid Jamaat, banned by President Maithripala Sirisena. Feelings still raw. Archbishop of Colombo still puzzled over not being informed of a terror threat.
I felt betrayed.
The expert view. A counter-terrorism expert doesn't agree with the government's discourse.
The security officials and government representatives, top down, are in damage control rather than crisis management.
The best indication yet. Former Defence Secretary Gotabe Rajapaksa expresses certainty in contesting the presidency. All that and much more coming up on First at 9 this Saturday, the 27th of April 2019.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamika Kanayaka. Now, in your very latest on the Easter bombings, President Maithripala Sirisena has taken measures to ban the organisations National Tawhid Jamaat and Jamaat-e-Millat Ibrahim in Sri Lanka. The president has made this move in line with powers vested on him under Emergency Regulation Number 1 of 2019. Accordingly, all activities of those organisations as well as their property will be seized by the government. Steps are also taken to ban other extremist organisations operating in Sri Lanka under emergency regulations. Now, the investigations into the Easter Sunday bombings took another violent turn last evening as 3 explosions and a shootout killed 15 people. The incident erupted inside the Mardu of Ampara district when a combined team of police, special task force and the army approached a suspicious house believed to be of suicide bombers. The 3 explosions were the work of suicide bombers as they blew themselves up inside the house, killing 3 women and 6 children. 3 more terrorists also perished in the shootout.
As part of the ongoing investigation into the Easter Sunday suicide bomb attacks, a police constable attached to the Kalmune police searched a suspicious house in the area last evening following a tip-off. When searching the house, the police officer was shot at by an individual in the house. However, the constable was able to escape and inform higher-ranking officers. Around 6 in the evening, the STF together with the army raided the house, during which a shootout ensued. During the shootout, 3 explosions were set off by suicide bombers within the house. Around 8 last night, the army oversaw the security of the entire area. The army and the police special task force conducted search operations in the house early this morning. During the operations, they found 12 bodies within the house, 3 men and 3 women as well as 6 children, believed to be those of the suspected suicide bombers and several civilians. 3 more dead bodies were found outside the house, with one of them having a T-56 firearm in his possession. When security personnel entered the house, they found a little girl who survived the suicide bombings. They also found a woman with severe injuries. After being administered first aid by the army, they were admitted to the hospital.
They've had some manner of training to a certain extent. The residents of the area provided us help in giving us information to conduct this raid. Had they not given us this information, these suicide bombers might have caused carnage by blasting it somewhere else. This is an enormous victory for us. Our soldiers conducted operations well and the situation in the area is back to normal. There is nothing to fear in this area at present. We are the army that safeguards the nation and we will definitely eliminate such groups from the entire eastern province.
Those who were killed in the explosion had arrived in the area from Kathankudi. They had been trained as suicide bombers by the National Tawheed Jamaat and had fled to Sainthamarudhu in order to evade police. The T-56 firearm found in the possession of one of the deceased suspects is believed to be a weapon of a police officer in Vaunathivu who was killed during the night while on duty in the recent past. Security officers recovered 323 detonators, gelignite sticks and 3 backpacks used for suicide bombings. Meanwhile, the security forces took measures to temporarily clear people from their houses in order to facilitate the search operations. Meanwhile, the police curfew which was imposed in the areas of Kalmune, Chavalakade and Samanturai is yet to be lifted.
Now, the police curfew, which was in effect overnight since the Easter Sunday bombings, is reinstated island-wide from 10 p.m. tonight until 4 a.m. tomorrow. Security officials have, in the meantime, have identified all the suicide bombers who carried out the attacks. 20 people were arrested within the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of arrestees to 100.
Security forces have already commenced search operations to arrest the suspects who carried out Easter Sunday attacks in 8 places around the country. During such a search operation, Navy arrested 2 persons travelling in a 3-wheeler with a kilogram of explosives near the Vellavatta railway station last night. The Navy also searched a suspect on a motorbicycle in Irakkandi, Trincomalee and found 16 water gel explosives and 160 detonators inside an ice box. Accordingly, the Navy searched the house of the suspect and found 43 water gel explosives and 55 detonators. The suspect was arrested and handed over to Kuchaveli police. Police and Police Special Task Force meanwhile searched a house in Nindavur following a tip-off that there is a group of suicide bombers. The police was able to find a board used in suicide kits, switches used in those boards, a knife and an unregistered van from the house. In the meantime, Kathankudi police arrested a suspect who is considered to be the driver of Zehran Hashim, considered as the leader of the group which is behind the Easter Sunday attacks. 7 other persons were also arrested along with a suicide kit and Tawheed Jamaat t-shirts and caps. During a special investigation in Juma Mosque in Maskelia, police found 50 small knives and 2 axes and arrested a suspect. Colombo Municipal Councillor Noordin Mohammad Tajuddin was arrested in connection with the 46 votes discovered in the area of Slave Island. The UNP councillor was taken into custody by police this morning. A suspect was arrested yesterday along with 46 votes during a search operation carried out by security forces in the Slave Island area. A suspect was arrested in the area of Ukuwela with 8 fake passports, 30 seals of state institutes, a seal belonging to a human rights organization, 4 graduate certificates from 4 local universities, letterheads of schools and a large number of photographs of the suspect with high-profile politicians. A printer and 23 bullets used in 20 bow firearms were also taken into police custody. Deputy Mayor of Negombo, Mohammad Fariz, was also arrested this morning. He was arrested at his house in Periyamulla and found a sword, a dagger and 22 covered batteries. Police says that the sword which was taken into custody looks like the ones which were found in Slave Island yesterday.
By yesterday, security forces had identified 7 suspects involved in the suicide attacks which were carried out across 8 locations in Sri Lanka last Sunday. Today, they were able to identify the 8th.
They were able to identify the suspect of the attack launched at St. Anthony's Shrine, Kochikade, to be Alauddin Ahmed Muat. He was previously identified as Abu Hamza by so-called Islamic State. The attacker of the St. Sebastian's Church in Katuapitiya is identified as Archie Mohammed Hastu, whose IS alias was Abu Khalil. The bomber who carried out the blast in the Kingsbury Hotel in Colombo is Mohammed Mubarak. Mohammed Ilham and Mohammed Qasim Mohammed are the ones who carried out the blast in Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo. It is Nathar Mohammed Azad who attacked the Zion Church in Batticaloa. The suicide bomber who carried out the attack at the Cinnamon Grand Hotel in Colombo is identified as Imsat Ahmed Ibrahim. It is Abdul Latif Jamil Mohammed who carried out the suicide attack near the Dehiwala Tropical Inn. The wife of Muhammad Ilham, Fatima Jeffrey, is identified to have perpetrated the blast at Mahavila Housing Scheme in Dematagoda.
Counter-terrorism expert believes that crisis management is what's required at this stage pertaining to the recent terror attacks. Speaking to Indiviri Amuatha during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24 today via Skype from Germany, Dr. Janssen Pierre said that the Sri Lankan government and security officials are doing damage control instead of crisis management, which requires a more tight and accurate approach. Dr. St. Pierre added that Sri Lanka's past success in defeating terrorism could lead to present-day complacency.
Sri Lanka, after the Sunday attacks, is plunged in global terrorism. We are part of it. There is no way out now, although we are faced with global terrorism. But what's next here? Is the region at risk?
Sri Lanka was vulnerable before the attacks. The situation was a problem before the attacks. Now it's made obvious by the attacks. What will be the lessons learned by politicians and security personnel in Sri Lanka following these attacks? Will it be the tendency to say, we've had years of civil war, we're familiar with terrorism, we know how to handle this, and this is how it should be done? Or will they be willing to learn and say, since the end of the civil war, there have been a lot of changes, the threat levels changed, the globalization of the threat has changed a lot. So how will security officials and politicians adapt?
We're a country that effectively defeated terrorism within the country, a civil war. 10 years later, the 10th year, this is what Sri Lanka faces. But what policies do you think our heads of state must adopt in order to tackle the situation now?
I see two aspects that are very important. The first one, and that's been a major problem since the moment the attacks occurred, is that the security officials and government representatives, top down, are in damage control rather than crisis management. And what I mean by this is that instead of saying, okay, we're going to conduct the investigation, we're going to verify the information, we're going to make sure everything is done accurately, and that we are going to provide the public with accurate and clear information. It's been quite the contrary. It's been from the get-go, oh, it wasn't me, it was them, trying to find scapegoats, leaking information that wasn't substantiated, that was either contradicted by other sources, and so on. So right now, it's more of a damage control, trying to show that something is being done rather than having the calm and the wisdom to say, look, we need to know exactly what's going on. And this is related to being able to learn lessons from other places. As you mentioned, Sri Lanka has a long history in dealing with terrorism. The question is, and I've seen it elsewhere, is if you have that type of success, it can sometimes lead to a complacency that prevents people from noticing how threats change, how it fits in a broader picture, and adapt these methods to a new type of threat. And this is really important to see what was done elsewhere. I mentioned about the terrible PR management. With all of this, it's important right now to focus on the investigation and not on the blame game. That's a reflex that many countries have. It's not to be done, and to make sure that it's done on a level-headed way and not to protect personal interests, either by reputation or for political reasons.
Now, former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa believes the government confused national security with the likes of reconciliation and human rights since it came to power, culminating in the tragic events unfolding in the country since the Easter Sunday. Speaking to Reuters, the former Defence Secretary also pledged to rebuild the intelligence services if he wins the presidential election, which he intends to contest in with utmost certainty. There had been numerous speculation over his candidacy in the looming presidential election, and this serves as the most concrete statement by him on his candidacy to date.
Former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa has firmly expressed his intention to run for presidency, pledging to put an end to the spread of Islamist extremism by rebuilding the intelligence service. In an interview with Reuters, the former Defence Secretary said the government was not prepared to handle the recent terror attack on Easter Sunday and highlighted that the situation could have been prevented had the current government not dismantled the intelligence network and extensive surveillance capabilities that he built up during the war and after. The article went on to note that Gotabaya Rajapaksa said he would be a candidate 100%, firming up months of speculation that he plans to run in the elections which are due by December. According to Reuters, the former Defence Secretary was critical of the government's response to the bombings and is quoted as saying, "Various people are blaming various people, not giving exactly the details as to what happened. Even people expect the names, what organizations did this, and how they came up to this level. That explanation was not given." In response to a question by Reuters on the court cases filed against him in the United States, the former Defence Secretary has dismissed it as a baseless and only a little distraction. He said he had asked US authorities to renounce his citizenship and that process was nearly done, clearing the way for his presidential candidature. The article notes that his immediate focus would fall on tackling the threat from radical Islam and to rebuild the security setup provided he wins the election. Gotabaya went on to say that he would give the military a mandate to collect intelligence from the ground and to mount surveillance of groups turning to extremism. His biggest perceived criticism, however, came as the former Defence Secretary touched on the government's thought process and conduct since it came into power. Despite the government reasoning that most of the intelligence units were disbanded owing to various allegations levelled against their members, Gotabaya believes the government was confused. He was quoted saying, "The government did not give priority to national security. There was a mix-up. They were talking about ethnic reconciliation, then they were talking about human rights issues. They were talking about individual freedoms," unquote.
Now moving on with other stories, Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith expresses disappointment in the government, saying that he felt betrayed upon seeing the leaked internal security document of the Defence Ministry which warned of future attacks. Expressing views to foreign media today, the Cardinal said that even though the government offered their assistance following the attacks, the Catholic community feels let down.
The President yesterday told me that they had even indicated the places where this attack will take place. But nobody informed us about it. We asked them why, but they don't seem to have an answer. We have lost our lives. So it's a very serious lapse on the part of the security agencies that they didn't tell us.
Don't you think that the hate speech shouldn't be allowed by the law and that there should be some reforms regarding to with regard to the law that governs the freedoms?
I think that should be a very important move in the light of what happened here, to move in with legislation to curtail hate speech against any group, any religion, any thinking, because this can cause unnecessary friction and violence. The government and other political parties have been talking about this for a long time, but no one has really bailed the cat. We hope that with this kind of situation coming in now, that they will have some mechanism to check and control this kind of situation.
Do you think that the Catholic community has been let down by the government?
After the event, the government came in a big way to help us in many ways. All those things have come in after the event. But I think it was more important for us if we only knew about this threat and we could have avoided that trouble altogether. So that's where we feel a little bit let down by the government. Another document has got out and we have seen that where the defense establishment has warned among themselves that there could be further attacks. But this particular document got out through some leakage and came to our hands. So that is why we know that there are further threats in the future.
Can you describe how you felt when you saw that document?
Well, I felt betrayed a little bit, sad, because everybody says, no, it's his baby, it's the other one's baby. But they must get down to brass tacks and help us to get over this and to go on with our normal life.
You mentioned earlier that it wasn't religiously motivated.
Yeah.
Right? For the very fact that 3 churches on an Easter Sunday Mass were targeted. So, how do you justify what you say?
Well, it is true that because how can we justify violence for the sake of religion? So when this kind of thing happens, we have to understand either they don't understand the religion, what religion is all about, or that they are instrumentalizing religion. I think the second case is even worse, because you instrumentalize religion in order to justify political agendas behind it. Because this global attempt to take over power and create a kind of a caliphate is a political agenda. It has nothing to do with religion. But then, unfortunately, this kind of politicizing has creeped in and has misled some of these people.
We're going to move in for a short break, but when we come back, we're going to bring you the views of a man who knows much about eradicating terrorism. See you soon.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is AdaDerana 24.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, United National Party's parliamentarian Field Marshal Fonseca believes that the government is nowhere near the right track in tackling the present terrorist situation in the country. Speaking to media following a meeting with Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith today, the Field Marshal added that given the level of the sophistication of the terrorist element, these particular terrorist elements must be taken seriously.
Do you think that it is a very serious affair right now for the army too and the...
Yeah, yesterday even there has been a firefight. It is not only the improvised bombs now, they are armed with sophisticated weapons. So that gives the indication that they are a properly organized organization now. They are combatants and they are terrorists. We have to take it serious.
So the way it is being handled, do you want to advise, or from your experience, do you want to say something about how to go about this?
Yes, already you can see there is a defensive method applicable, already applied, defense of various places and individuals, but that is only one aspect. We have to ensure that this organization is not effective in this country anymore to terrorize the people. There is a lot of planning required to go through a campaign. You can't do it overnight.
What do you think, what is your apprehension? How much inroad has this organization made from the operation, and from what recoveries were made yesterday? What does it tell you?
Yeah, they are a substantially effective organization already. We can't underestimate them. In Sri Lanka, they have the capacity to effectively activate some terrorist activities. We have not seen, even most probably we have only seen the tip of the iceberg. We can't underestimate. We have to take it seriously.
One last question, between the tussle between the president and the prime minister, intelligence failure, what do you think? Where is it?
Everything has failed. When I say government, you know from where to start, where to end. Everybody has failed. අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම නෑ. ලයින් එක ගැන හිතන්නවත් පටන් ගන්න නෑ.
යමතුළු කීප දෙනෙක් නම් මන්ත්‍රීවරු කීප දෙනෙක් නම් කියනවා. දැන් මේ සම්බන්ධව කටයුතු කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? යම්
කිසි පුද්ගලයෙක් අඳුනගෙන හිටව පළියට දේශපාලනඥයෝ කියන්නේ හැම
Politicians know all sorts of people. Just because they know someone, it doesn't mean they are connected to an incident. I believe attempting to make personal gains by pointing to politicians and inconveniencing them is deplorable.
පහත් ක්‍රියාවක් හැටියටයි මම දකින්නේ.
2 days ago, the number of deaths reported from the suicide attack caused quite a stir when the Ministry of Health announced that the previous death toll, which stood at 359, was revised by more than 100, dropping to 253. Director General of Health Services at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Anil Jasinghe, who moved to offer clarification to the revised number, said that an estimate had to be made owing to the difficulty in counting the number of deaths as a result of body parts recovered from the site of the attacks.
On the first day when this happened, most of the dead bodies were brought to Colombo Chief Judicial Medical Officer's mortuary, where the Chief JMO claimed there are 147 dead bodies. But of course, they are put into bags, and as there are body parts, you have to estimate, you can't get into an exact figure initially. But when it comes to other hospitals, we had almost exact figures, other than a few numbers here and there. So over these days, the number of bodies in the Colombo JMO following postmortems, following sorting out bodies, the number has certainly come down from 147 to 114. But even if you count it as 147, at one point we said the death toll is 290 plus. But of course there were reports in the media, death toll to be once it was reported 320 and then later it was reported as 360. I have to say that these numbers the Ministry of Health has not given and no party has asked from us the death toll.
Dr. Jasinghe went on to say that over 42 foreigners have been reported killed in the Easter Sunday attacks.
There are 90 patients being treated in several hospitals and there are 31 of them admitted still taking intensive care. And out of deaths, we have already handed over 245 deaths to relatives out of all estimated number of deaths of 253. That's an estimated figure. It could be somewhere around 253. Now, out of the bodies handed over, we have handed over 36 bodies of foreigners and we believe there are about 6 bodies of foreigners to be identified and handed over. So therefore, we say the death toll of foreigners is 42 plus and of course another 40 plus foreigners were injured.
UK media outlet The Times says that a US agent described Sri Lanka's reaction to last Sunday's terror blast as chaotic. This comment comes in a backdrop when a team of the Federal Investigation Bureau of the United States is in Sri Lanka to assist local authorities to conduct investigations into the serial bombings on Easter Sunday. According to the article published by The Times today, a US intelligence agent admitted that the country's reaction to the attacks as a poor show. He has said, quote, "They are getting on top of things now, but the start of the week was chaos," unquote. The media outlet further noted that Western intelligence agencies are assisting a desperate manhunt with scores of militants linked to Islamic State on the loose. We're going to move in for one more break, and when we come back, there's more news on the other side. Stay tuned.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is AdaDerana 24.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Indian media outlet The Hindu reports that investigators have identified Zahran Hashim as the leader of the National Tawheed Jamaat, and he spent a substantial time in South India. Quoting an army official whose name was not revealed, the media report said that some of those radical youth were indoctrinated and trained, possibly in Tamil Nadu.
According to the Hindu, investigators identified Zahran Hashim as the leader of the National Tawheed Jamaat, which they said executed the highly coordinated blast on Sunday. A top army official speaking to the Hindu had said that Zahran Hashim spent substantial time in South India. The report added that a senior official who is among a team of Sri Lankan investigators revealed that 9 suicide bombers, including a woman, have been identified. He went on to say, quote, "We're looking into the IS angle. We also suspect that some of those radical youth were indoctrinated and trained in India, possibly Tamil Nadu," unquote. The Hindu further reports that Indian officials would not comment that Hashim travelled to India, but pointed out to evidence of virtual links he maintained with youth believed to be of Indian origin. The Indian media outlet goes on to say that more than 100 followers of Hashim's Facebook page are being investigated, and that the first hints of Hashim's doctrinal videos to likely radicalize youth emerged when Indian authorities interrogated 7 members of a group whose leader official found was a follower of Hashim. An Indian official speaking to Hindu has said that the men were IS sympathizers and they arrested in September 2018 in Coimbatore on suspicion that they were plotting the assassination of certain political and religious leaders in India.
The central bank says that it has observed high interest rates charged on lending products and excessively high interest rates offered on deposit products by licensed commercial banks and licensed specialized banks as well as non-bank financial institutions, despite measures taken to bring down overnight interest rates and enhance market liquidity through the reduction of statutory reserve ratio. Especially in the context of well-contained inflation and inflation expectations, the CBSL says Sri Lanka's interest rates in real terms also have been found to be excessive in comparison to other regional economies. Issuing a communique today, the central bank requested licensed banks and non-bank financial institutions to reduce interest rates on deposits, especially for the small and medium sector, in order to enhance credit flows to the real economy. The communique went on to say that the central bank expects the lending rates to reduce by around 200 basis points to SMEs in the near term and will closely monitor the behavior of interest rates of licensed and banks and non-bank financial institutions on both deposits and loans and take further measures as appropriate in future. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.